Big dub for the boys. Let's go. Finish the season strong. Big dub. Big dub. Big dub.
That's what we needed. That's what we needed.
Let's go.
The basement, but not in the basement, not on Zoom, not in some board, in the studio, the final week of the NFL. It is the Sports Cubicle here, live on WCPT 820 and Heartland Signal. I'm your host, Mike Mercado. On the board is Paul Shivari. Joining us on the microphone to the right is Devin Tingle, and later on we have the marvelous Dan Marver joining us, and that's right, to end the season. The Chicago Bears walk off in Lambeau Field 24-22. That campaign ends with 5 wins, 12 losses, but a victory against the hated Green Bay Packers. We are here to eulogize, to discuss, to break down what was the 2024 Chicago Bears, and we want to hear from each and every one of you. Devin, where can the lovely folks listening to us here on WCPT on the Sports Cubicle, where can they call us? How can they get in touch with us this entire episode?
Well, of course, if you want, you can always give us a call or a text at 773-763-9278. Again, 773-763-WCPT. Amazing, we got lucky enough to get that number. And we're on Facebook at WCPT820. And we're on YouTube at WCPT820. And I can see all of your lovely little faces watching us. And if you want to call, text, all that good stuff. Paulacious! You're wearing a Bears hat today.
Yeah, I was rooting for the Bears today. I thought they were going to beat the Packers, and I wanted them to beat the Packers, and they went out and they beat the Packers today.
So it was an interesting game. I think there's a lot of different conversations that were happening before we got into this matchup. Should Caleb have played? What does this game mean? Did you want the draft position? All of that was in play in this game against Lambeau. But I think the most important thing is your rookie quarterback finally got his deserved game-winning drive in a season where he should have had it all the way back against Washington. We're week 11 when you should have beat the Packers the first time and your field goal gets blocked. This time in their home stadium as they're getting ready to go into a playoff game. You beat them by a field goal because of your rookie quarterback with some great plays by DJ Moore, DeAndre Swift, Rome Odunze. A great fourth quarter by Caleb, I thought, even though they didn't necessarily put points on the board. You took advantage of Jordan Love not being in the game. And more importantly, you might have been spoiler to the Packers. They might have to play on a Saturday instead of a Sunday. And we know in the NFL, by the 19th week you're playing football, every day matters for recovery. And I think that ends up being the biggest story for the Bears after an interesting game against Green Bay. Now, Devin, what did you think? What were your emotions going into this game against the Packers, knowing full well that there wasn't necessarily anything at stake besides hopefully a good showing from the rookie QB?
Honestly, I was hoping they'd lose, Mercado. I wanted them to lose. I wanted them to get a better draft pick. They're probably going to end up number 10 in the draft overall. And let's be real here. Even if they got the best, which would have been number 7 going in today, I'm not sure how lucky you're going to get at number 7 in the draft on a team that has so many holes and things that need to get saved there, Mercado. But I must say, this was one of those games that it was very just surprising. When was the last time the Bears returned a kick? I cannot for the life of me remember that. Was it the Devin Hester era? I really do not remember that, and that was the most exciting part at the beginning of the game there. The Bears had a lead for most of this game. Going into the fourth quarter, the Bears had the lead. Ever since, was this week 5 against the Jaguars? When was the last time they had a lead going into the fourth quarter here? I don't remember this. And then they started slipping up like they do a lot here. And, of course, as I was watching this game with the Paulacious one over there, we were both kind of in that thing of, like, they're going to blow it. They're going to bleep and blow it. I almost swore again, Mercado. Even this team wins, they make me mad. And, of course, it felt very like, oh, man, you ever have deja vu? Because, once again, we're coming up to a field goal with just seconds left against the Packers. And that ball, it curved a little bit, Mercado. I'm like, did it get tipped again? Did we blow this in game-breaking Bears fashion again? No. They ended up winning here. So, yes, it is nice to beat the it's nice to beat the Packers, especially going out of the season and messing up their playoff chances here. But when you look at the big picture of the Chicago Bears, which are around 4:30 or so, we're going to dive into the Bears season. I have a lovely eulogy prepared. I promised myself I wouldn't cry. But it's just going to be interesting, Mercado, because now the season is over. We saw Caleb Williams look strong. We saw DeAndre Swift look incredibly strong. And one thing I really liked that we saw in this game was the connection between Caleb Williams and DJ Moore, because we haven't really seen much of that this year. And going into this game, like, maybe we want to try and trade DJ Moore for a better draft pick, but I don't know.
See, I think more importantly than anything is to your point, it always is nice to have better draft position. But in a scenario in which you have the rookie quarterback going into his sophomore year, you're not in desperate need of a wide receiver, of a running back, of a quarterback. What you need is interior linemen, both on the defensive and offensive side. And I don't think the Bears have played themselves out of getting a strong candidate at rookie for that come NFL draft season. And we know they have, I think it's like $80 million in cap space going into next season. So we know that's what they're going to attack. I think more what was really important, what was impactful for this game was they didn't give up. This team, and I've questioned it, we've heard a lot of talking from the players on this team, and I'm all for hearing players speak their minds and tell us what they're going through and how they see things going for them. But when you're losing games and your coach has been fired, the offensive coordinator has been fired, your entire coaching staff has been elevated, and you're still doing the boneheaded mistakes, you're still finding weird ways to lose, it's on the players to try to steer things correctly. It's been on them the last few weeks. And this week, in this game with adversity, with even some self-inflicted wounds, they found a way to win a game that they've lost all season against a playoff team. And I get it that Jordan Love was out of the game. But that happens everywhere along the NFL. And for all those who kind of, at the very least, are cynical about the win, which I get, it's only their, fifth win, we said? What if they had lost? How hard in the paint would you have gone on Caleb Williams for that fumble with DJ Moore if they had lost that game? You're going into 2025 now with better emotions, seeing your rookie QB for the first time in his career go to Lambeau Field in the coldest game he's ever played, and they found a way to win.
And that's the thing. I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, Jordan Love was out for a huge chunk of this game, Mercado, but does Caleb Williams play defense? Is he our strong safety, our cornerback? No, he's our quarterback here. And we got 21 points in this game. I mean, one was off a kick return, but still, it's like just definitely seeing that this is a guy that against a playoff defense, let alone, who had a pretty good performing today. You know, it's one of those things that really does kind of show there, Mercado, because we in Chicago love to poo-poo on the quarterback so dang much here. But it does kind of make me wonder what has been the problem with this team for so many years now. Is it the coaching? Is it the quarterback? Is it all this overall here? But, you know, as much as I wanted Matt Eberflus gone, his defense was so much stronger here. But keeping the Packers to a 14-point, even, you know, with it being a backup quarterback, still pretty impressive when you still have guys like Josh Jacobs and whatnot on that team.
So I think the real question now is, what is the front office and coaching staff going to look forward, looking forward to the future? What is the coaching staff going to look like? Is Ryan Poles going to be the general manager of the Chicago Bears? Is Ben Johnson going to be the head coach of the Chicago Bears? And luckily for us, in just a few moments, to kind of make us all feel a little bit smarter, as somebody who's been plugged into the Chicago Bears, has been there from the beginning of the season in the locker room.
Virginia McCaskey.
Other than Virginia McCaskey, happy birthday, Virginia McCaskey. Josh Buckholzer is going to join us in just a few minutes to break down what he saw today and the entire season in this Bears campaign. But it's the ultimate question. We want to hear from you as we eulogize, as we put to bed this Bears season. What did you think about this big win against the Packers? Was it a big win? What did you think about Caleb Williams' rookie season? Do you believe Ryan Poles will be the general manager of the Chicago Bears next season? And who do you believe is the front runner? And who do you believe should be the head coach of the Chicago Bears? Paulie, before we hit the phone lines, before we get to our amazing guests, your thought about the game and kind of the future of the Chicago Bears when it comes to their general manager and coaching staff.
As far as the game, I'm happy to see them win. Thought that they could win. I thought it was just, they haven't been playing horribly. I think we over-exaggerate this team because of the high expectations going into the season. But I think that even in a 10-game losing streak, we looked it up, Devin and I, within a one score in 5 of those games. So close, almost beat Green Bay on a field goal, similar situation just 7 weeks ago. So it was neat to see that they ended up making up for that in a way, that, you know, the away team won this series this year. But just the mistakes they made leading up to it, they did everything they could to try and lose that game. You know, calling the timeout early, even just kind of setting up for the field goal. Like, it wasn't even like they tried to set up down the center in between the hash marks. It was like the Green Bay tackle, like, kind of just spun them around, you know, to put the Bears kind of centralized, you know. So everything worked out. Green Bay kind of played to lose this game almost with some of their mistakes, but it wins a win. I think it's big to not end on a losing note. You know, at the very least, I think it's for morale for the team. It's something to go off of, but at the same time, you know, I wouldn't be bragging about this win, but at the same time, less and less you'll see the lopsided Green Bay over the Bears in the, you know, long time, all-time series of the last 20 years or whatever it is, where the Bears have only won a handful of times. So it'll be nice to have another victory in that category. But the team is obviously, it definitely needs coaching. It definitely needs structure. It definitely needs a few more players. But I think in a very tough NFC North, they were a very competitive opponent. They weren't a pushover team to any of those, you know, strong teams in the NFC North. So I'd like to see what they end up doing next year and in the offseason to make themselves good again.
Devin, where can the fine folks listen to us on this final Bears post-game conversation here on the Sports Cubicle on WCPT 820?
Well, of course, you can find us on WCPT 820 AM. You can find us on YouTube at WCPT 820 AM. Thank you, Andy. You can find us on Facebook at WCPT 820 AM, Chicago's Progressive Talk. I think we're even on Twitter or X. I don't know why, but hey, we got to invade those two spaces somehow. And you can find us at heartlandsignal.com. Just go to the very bottom of the page. I don't know why they keep us at the bottom. You click on that little tab on the right. It should be on the left that says press play for the Sports Cubicle.
And if they want to call in,
you can call us at 773-763-9278. You can also text us at, guess what, 773-763-9278.
So, friend of the show, somebody who's been here from the entire jump street of this campaign. You can check him out over at Clocker Sports, Triple Zeros, of course, Heavy on Sports. He is also planning right now his taxes, your taxes. He has a spaceship ready. He is part of NASA. He has 1,000 jobs. He is our brother. He is your brother. He is Josh Buckwalter. Josh, what's up, brother?
Man, thanks for having me on. That introduction is always great.
Josh, I'm sorry. I didn't know we were brothers until just now. I forgot to get you a Christmas present.
It's all good. He shared with me anyway.
Okay, good.
There it is. So, Josh, for all of you who want some insider great stuff, follow him on Twitter at Josh G. Buck. You have some great interviews, some conversations you have with the players in the locker room right after practices, of course, after games. And no games seem so much sweeter than what we just saw in Lambeau Field as the Chicago Bears found a way to win a football game 24-22, their 5th win of the season. Your initial thoughts of the fallout of the win, Caleb's first win at Lambeau Field?
I think that there's no better way to end the season. I'm actually opening up my article for the post-game wrap-up. It was a game that was full of redemption stories. And we can fawn over how Carlos Santos got that 50-plus yarder to win it. And that's great. You know, he deserves it as much as anybody. But we also have to talk about how Caleb drove the team into position to get there after they had given up the lead. That's what you want your quarterback, your QB1, to look like in the clutch moments, and he delivered. There were some hiccups along the way. That's to be expected, especially at this point of the season. We know what this group is by now. But you want them to end up on a high note. We talk all season about there being no moral victories, but going out with a win like this in the way that they did it is undoubtedly a moral victory I think that they will take 100 times out of 100.
Josh, Mercado said you've been in the locker room here, and they had a big win today, so I'm just curious, was there a different atmosphere in the locker room today as opposed to the past 10 weeks? And have you seen the team in the locker room, I guess, you know, their correlation and compassion change, I guess, so to speak?
I'm under the weather today, so I was not able to travel with them. Did not want to infect anybody else. But I have seen you've seen their attitude change from the beginning of the season to this point in the year where they started with so much optimism but ended up kind of resigned to what seemed to be their fate to lose out the string. They weren't necessarily quitting, but there was a lot of lack of surprise by the way that they continually found ways to lose games. It was almost as if, not even almost, you had players coming right out and saying that you needed a culture change. So I expect this week when they clean out their lockers to be a lot more energetic. And that, to me, I think will be the best sign going forward because, like I said, you don't want to end a tough season regardless. You don't want to end it on such a poor note as losing, 11 games in a row. So I'm glad they were not able to do that, or they did not do that.
So we know that Black Monday now is upon us, and a bunch of coaches will get fired, a bunch of offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators, general managers. Here in Chicago, that's already started. But now the question is Ryan Poles. So we look forward. A win in Green Bay is nice, but now the truth is, what is next for the Chicago Bears? Everything is about Caleb, and that includes who the person is that's going to build a roster and who's going to coach those players. So let's put your feet to the fire, Josh. Do you think Ryan Poles is going to be the general manager of the Chicago Bears next season?
I do. At this stage, I do. And if for no other reason than to say if you're going to highlight the things that are good about this roster, including Caleb Williams, then that's going to have to go under Ryan Poles' docket, right? Now, you can criticize him for the mistakes, and there are plenty to choose from. But I think that an organization that is looking for stability, not only in the quarterback position, but the head coaching position, but also in the front office, the changeover, especially if you have somebody as strong as Kevin Warren there to help guide the way, I think would probably be something that they're trying to avoid if they possibly can. Now, that can all change if the head coaching candidate that Kevin Warren wants is staunchly against keeping Ryan Poles. That can make things a lot more interesting. But as it stands right now, I would imagine that Poles has, remember, at the beginning of the season, he was being praised for all the work he's done to turn this roster around and put this group in a position to be competitive this year. That did not happen, but we can't necessarily let the results that we've seen turn how they're going to evaluate him overall, because they still have a bigger picture, broader picture view. You can point to this thing here and that thing there and say, if that works out, Poles' job, the job that he's done looks a lot better. So I feel like that's the approach they're going to take, if possible.
So let's keep everything even. Let's put anything as possible in this scenario. I believe that Ben Johnson should be the main target for the Bears, but there's also names like Joe Brady, obviously Mike Vrabel. There's been names that we've heard from Ron Rivera, Mike McCarthy, Arthur Smith, for the love of help for all of us, the fact that he's been named as well. But there's been a ton of names. You cannot mess this up, whether it's Ryan Poles or a brand new general manager that comes in with your head coach. Who are your top three or the top guys that you keep hearing that you feel are going to be the real candidates for this Bears head coaching job? And more importantly, do you believe they have in mind already the person who is going to be the head coach of the Chicago Bears?
We're backwards. So I do believe that they have at least a prime candidate in mind. We keep hearing Ryan Poles talk about the leader of men. I think that's a telltale that he's trying to find a defensive guy. When you hear that, to me, that invokes a vision of a defensive-oriented coach. And then from there, I would say that I would hope that they have broadened their scope beyond that. I do think that having a offensive play caller locked in for your young, promising franchise quarterback is essential. And so, therefore, my top of the list would probably be Ben Johnson. In any order you want to throw them in, but Ben Johnson. I do like Cliff Kingsbury. I know people are down on Cliff after his Arizona tenure, but we're talking about guys getting second chances. I'm not sure why he wouldn't get one as well. And then from there, you go to Joe Brady. You have to answer questions about what happened at his last stop. How much of that is him? How much of that is the talent that he has at his disposal? So the list would be Johnson, Kingsbury, and Brady. But then from there, you have the mutual interest that you're hearing about in Pete Carroll. You have Brian Flores was Ryan Poles' college teammate. There's connections to a lot of these older coaches, too, these retreads as well. So I'm not sure that there's a clear-cut favorite. I think they have a guy they want in mind, but I'm not sure that I would say there's a favorite for the job just yet.
And we need to find out whose agent is who. He is Josh Buckholzer. You can find him on social media at Josh G. Buck. He does amazing work all over media, of course, heavy on sports, Clocker Sports, Triple Zeros, LWO Sports, Soaring Down South. He's always in the Bears locker room. You could catch him pre- and post-game. He is a must follow if you are a Bears fan or a fan of sports in general.
So, Josh, I know it's going to take until we get to the head coach hiring, obviously, but I've been talking about the draft, I think, since week 10, 11, once we realized this team's season was over here. My question is, it looks like the Bears, at the best, are going to finish with the 10th pick overall in the draft here. My question is, who do you think they're going to draft versus who you want them to draft? Because let's be real here. Does this team ever fully listen to its fans?
No, they don't. But, there's an adage in professional sports that when you start listening to the fans, you join them. So I can't tell anybody how to run their business because I'll be danged if they try to tell me how to run mine. So,
bring back Cutler!
Caleb was the first quarterback to beat the Packers in Lambeau since Jay Cutler. So, hey, there you go. I really hope that they target the trenches. And to me, that means that you might be able to even trade back to accumulate some more picks to double up on that. But they have to get some premium talent up front. They've tried to go the bargain route too many times. Just look at who the makeup is. I think they got the 23rd most expensive offensive line in the league. You're getting what you're paying for there. And so I would really hope, expect, and think that they will target some offensive line help to protect Caleb Williams better than he was this season.
So this is where I get a little frustrated, or at the very least confused in how they're going to handle this, because obviously, like you just said, right, if they start acting and reacting to what fans want, they'll end up just with us. But the idea is They got to start interviewing coaches. They have to start scouting players for college right now. They have to get ready. They have a lot of money in free agency, so they have to make their decisions. Tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, when a lot of people are having their coffee, we need to know who the GM of the Chicago Bears is. We have to know what his list is going to look like with Kevin Warren, because you're going against other teams in the NFL, including possibly the Cowboys, the Giants, you name them. So, I mean, in your opinion, how fast are they going to react? How fast are we going to know? I mean, is it going to be as early as 7 p.m. when all the games are done, what the future is going to look like for all these guys?
I would imagine that we get an announcement on the current staff in place soon after the official final staff of the season. And then as far as their next search, I would imagine they try to draw that out. I don't think they want to rush into it like they did this last time. It did not work out well for them, especially if Poles is going to be heading it. I think he'll be a little bit more deliberate this time. Remember, he could also lose his right-hand man, Ian Cunningham, this offseason, and I think that's a very interesting dynamic because we've seen Cunningham kind of save Poles from making some lesser-than deals in the past, and that could be something that changes how maybe even the ownership and Warren views him. So a lot of variables at play there as the season ends, but I do think that we'll get confirmation or some kind of closure on this season relatively quickly when the final snap is played in the NFL.
Well, I'm just looking at the kind of the rules now for interviewing coaches that are still on playoff staffs, and like tonight's game has huge implications because I think it's like the winner of tonight's game can do a virtual interview this week, but the loser of tonight's game can't do an interview, and then in-person interviews starts after the divisional round, which I didn't realize was a rule.
So that would be Josh Wright. That would be Ben Johnson and Brian Flores, essentially, will determine how early the Bears can coach any of these guys, right?
Aaron Glenn as well.
There you go, Aaron Glenn, right?
And that's why you take your time. You don't want to rush into it because you're limiting yourself from the pool of candidates that you might really want just because you're trying to get something done. So that's why I don't think that they'll rush to any of it, because even if you get that interview in that brief window, it's probably not all the information that you want to get. There's a strict time limit on how long the interviews can be. And so I feel like they'll take their time and make sure they're doing this right, because this is, guys, if Poles comes back, I'm not sure how much more of a precarious situation the Bears could really find themselves in when you have a Caleb Williams already there showing you what he's showing you and all the clear deficiencies elsewhere around the roster.
Josh, before we let you go, there is one thing I want to talk about that's outside of Soldier Field, but in the realm of Chicago sports. But really fast, make sure you guys are following us on YouTube at The Sports Cubicle, and currently right now on WCPT 820, we can see your comments. And this is a question that I think we're going to kind of end the entire segment before the 5 o'clock hours. Do the Bears pay for O-line or draft several pieces? This is from Ariel. Shout out to you for watching us. Shout out to everybody watching and listening. And I think Josh brings up a great point. Whether it's drafting or money, that's what they're going to focus on, is interior alignment help. And I think that is going to be the main focus, because you need to protect your most valuable asset, and that is your quarterback. But Josh, a valuable asset in Chicago is the love and admiration for number one, Simeon High School, Derrick Rose, and we saw the big ceremony at the United Center this weekend. We know number one will be retired. No one else will wear that jersey in Chicago. So many emotions, so many opinions. What were your thoughts when you heard the announcement, when you've seen the videos, you've seen the love showed? Everybody says your favorite point guard's favorite point guard. What did you think about the entire news cycle, the entire story of Derrick Rose getting his jersey retired and getting all this love from the Chicago Bulls?
I think my favorite line to come out of the entire thing was Joakim Noah saying that Rose was the people's champ. And anybody that was around to witness his run with the Bulls, those Bulls teams, knows exactly what Noah was speaking on. And it was misty-eyed, man. It was something that really brought some emotion out, because the journey that he went through, not only getting to the point where he was the Bulls superstar, but also what happened after that. And to see it come back full circle in such a heartwarming way was just great.
Josh, you are the man. Thank you so much. What a great 2024 for you. So proud of you. All the love to you and your family, of course. You can follow him at Josh G. Buck over on Twitter, on X, all over social media. He's, of course, on Clocker Sports, on Triple Zeros, Heavy on Sports, LWO Sports, Soaring Down South. Josh, thank you so much, brothers. Any last words to put a bow on the 2024 Chicago Bears?
Thank you to you guys for having me on. Thank you to the fans for their support. Looking forward to many more seasons in the future.
You're the best, Josh. Thank you so much. Josh Bocoulter joining us here on the Sports Cubicle, WCPT 820 and HeartlandSignal.com. Devin Tingle, Paul Shivari, I'm Mike Mercado. We got so much left here on this episode of the Sports Cubicle. Keep it tuned here.
Think Theory Radio.
Theoretical astrophysicist Dan Hooper.
If there's someplace a light year away from now, there's nothing I can do now that can influence that place in less than a year. No matter what I do, no matter how I build my quantum machine, or no matter what I entangle or what I quantum teleport, nothing I can do here can affect that until a full year has passed, allowing light to get there at the speed of light.
Think Theory Radio with Damian Perdue. Saturdays at 6 p.m. on WCPT 820.
How was your drive to school?
Let me tell you, I had to get my iced coffee first. I just can't seem to put it down. My favorite rapper just announced a tour. My phone was buzzing like crazy. I'm so excited. I had to text all my friends right then to talk about it. Then, someone started calling me and...
Let's try that again.
I turned my phone off right away. I never drive distracted.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter.
So this is what a Bears victory show feels like? The Bears find a way to beat the Green Bay Packers 24-22 in Green Bay. Their record now 5-12 in the season. Caleb Williams, 21 of 29, 148 yards, and 1 touchdown. Jordan Love leaving the game with an injury. Christian Watson leaving the game with an injury. Now, what's on the line for Green Bay is a game on Saturday or Sunday. Will they have enough time to get healthy? We are here on the Sports Cubicle on WCPT 820 and Heartland Signal. He's Devin Tingle. He's Paul Shivari. I'm Mike Mercado. The marvelous one, Dan Marvel, will join us in just a little while. And we are taking your calls on the Chicago Bears' final game of the season as we now look forward to the draft.
Wait, before we go to calls, we need to do something here because I guess...
You're right. It's only right. We all got to step away, everybody.
Dearly beloved, thank you all for coming. I'm sorry. I promised myself I'd keep a straight face here because
shut those kids down.
We are ready to mourn the loss of the Chicago Bears. Thankfully, I thought they'd lose today, so a lot of my speech has been cut. Because, well, of course, when do the Bears ever do what we want them to do here? And as you can tell, this is music you can hear on WNDZ 24/7. Back to the Chicago Bears, everyone. A team that had such high promise of finishing 9-8, finishing a measly 5-12 here. We came so far. We had the once-in-a-lifetime generational talent, Trevor Lawrence. I mean, Caleb Williams. We've heard that one before, haven't we? And he had so much great promise in DJ Moore coming, and him into barely cohesing, getting along, making it all disappointing here. But hey, we got Keenan Allen, who's older than Paul, and has more receptions than Paul does in his entire lifetime. Sit down, Grandpa.
I don't think Keenan Allen's older.
I know he's not. That's a joke.
No one in the NFL older than me.
Oh my goodness, I'm losing my point here. We fired the one and only Matt Eberflus. We had the savior in Thomas Brown, who did not really do anything else for us. But now, Bears fans, the question is, do we give up hope? Do we look forward for next year?
Yes.
And what do we do on Sundays? And that is why, on Sundays, you need to go to your Goodwill, your thrift store now. You need to buy a copy of Titanic on VHS. VHS. Can't do it because on VHS, they have cassette number 1 and cassette number 2.
It's because he couldn't do it last week.
And cassette number 1 is much like the Bears in every game before halftime. They make you think they have a shot. They make you think they're going to win. And then you go to halftime, you get yourself a little beer, you go to the bathroom, and you put in cassette number 2, and they hit the iceberg, and just like the Bears, always blowing it in the end. And what do the Bears do this week? They ruin it. And this is my speech. It's useless now. But hey, finishing 5-12 is better than finishing 4-13, I guess. Especially when you're beating the Green Bay Packers. In Walter Payton's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. So is Matt Eberflus Billy Zane? Is Thomas Brown Kathy Bates? Who exactly is Caleb Jack or Rose? I need to know this.
If he's on the team, he's Rose. If he's off team next year, he's Jack.
There you go. So Thank you, Devin, for those lovely, lovely words. You are our pallbearer.
And thank you, Bears, for ruining half what I was going to say.
Isn't it? You know what? I'm not even going to get into it because, of course, the Bears find a way to upset everybody. When they want them to lose, they find a way to lose. But we want to hit the phone lines. Let us get to the peoples of Chicago. After a Bears win, the Bears find a way to beat Green Bay in Green Bay 24-22. Let's hear from you here on the Sports Cubicle. Polly.
Oh, let's go to Brian from Joliet first.
Ooh. What's going on, Brian?
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Very insightful commentary, except I'm, as a Bears fan since 1969, I'm ecstatic, and you could say there's one thing I can't hack, it's the damn pack. And the Bears.
Can we say that on radio?
I think so.
I think he should trademark it. Brian, let me ask you this. So it was obviously the Bears weren't going to go to the playoffs. Obviously, they weren't playing for a draft position for a quarterback. But it's a great time. It's always a great time to beat the Packers. Heading into this game, though, honestly, now that the victory's over, did you want Caleb Williams to play in this game?
Yes, because it was necessary for him to get that kind of experience. I think he was wise not to be, running that much, but I mean, going for scrambling yards, extra yards that much. But yeah, definitely it needs that kind of experience, and I wanted them to win because, as I said, it's a win anyway, but it's against the Packers especially, and they did. Somebody was telling me that the game meant nothing to the Packers. Well, it dropped them from the 6th to the 7th seed, so that might put a hurt on their playoff chances, and I think it's good to win. To have a win. Maybe looking forward to next year on a positive note. I still think they need to fire Poles and hopefully get Ron Rivera in there as head coach. But I think in the draft 1 through 7, they need offensive linemen. There's things they need. I know that, but for now, I could be ecstatic.
Thank you, Brian. We always appreciate you calling in. I think you really hit on a couple of these things, right? Where we're talking about, you found a way. Now the Packers have to decide whether they're playing on. They're going to find out if they play on Saturday or Sunday. That's huge for recovery. And your rookie quarterback, I don't necessarily believe in momentum, but I do believe in things mattering for certain players, especially the guys that roll over to next year. Caleb Williams and his rookie season, finding a way to win in Lambeau Field is something that he can now check out. That monkey's off his back.
And he made all the starts. First time since 2009, a Bears quarterback made all of the starts in the season. And he protected the football for the most part. I mean, maybe not today. I think he might have had an interception or not. I don't know if it counted. But more touchdowns than interceptions in his rookie season, a full slate of starts. I think overall, when you grade him, you've got to be at least satisfied with what he did this year, even though it didn't translate to wins.
And he did not break David Carr's number for most sacks in a season, so came close.
But like franchise-wise, he now owns all the rookie quarterback records, which isn't much, but at least a modern-day quarterback owns it. And
it's the baby steps that a 100-year-old organization.
You mean it's not? We're not going back to Sid Luckman holding everything.
No longer
Jay Cutler.
Do you have to worry about that? And he only ends the season.
Benora? Wait, that's the White Sox guy.
And he ends the season, I believe, with 20 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. So a nice way for a rookie season with only 5 wins. Well, who else do we have, Paul? You want to go back to the phone lines and get some of these thoughts as we eulogize the 2024 Chicago Bears?
Yeah, let's go to Dave in Hoffman Estates.
Dave, what do you got for us as the Bears find a way to win a game at Lambeau Field, their last game of the season?
Yeah, no, I'm happy. As I told you, I'm a Lions fan first and then a Bears fan second. So when they played, I'm happy as could be because it took the Lions about, 20 years to win up in Lambeau, too, there a few years back, too. So I know the feeling. But mentioning about Ben Johnson, how do you know he wants to be a head coach? He's got a pretty sweet thing. He got a pretty sweet thing there in Detroit, and like they say, a lot of these guys have been with kids and that, coordinators and that, and they go and they take on a head coaching job. There's a lot more headaches to it, and you're starting off with a bottom-feeding team, and you're used to that. And he's got, like I said, a sweet thing in Detroit, and they got these guys, they got all these, like they said, the well is deep with his tricks that he likes to pull too, and that. And I don't know, that's just my thoughts. And he had a chance last year, if you recall, to go to a couple of teams, and he turned it down, saying that he had unfinished business here in Detroit. And we'll see what happens tonight. Then, if they're first or fifth, if they lose out, then he may be back in Detroit. So I wouldn't put the cart before the horse, saying that it's a done deal, that he's going to be the man. He might price himself out again too. Get some high figure in that. But I did hear who you guys might get though from the Lions next year is that offensive lineman Dan Skipper. Okay. And he's of the fame last year when that Brian Durant tried to say that he had checked in, for that 2-point conversion. He's like on a basketball team, a good sixth man. He's been a great front lineman. I hope we don't. No, he's been damn good, when we've had some hurt front linemen. So, and I got to thinking about like a great coaches. Here in Chicago, we're still living out for 40 years ago with the 85 Bears, and Ditko only went one. You guys, we could have had a dynasty here. But because of his ego and all of that stuff, he decided that instead of using Steve Fuller against the Redskins that time, he's sticking Doug Flutie. He's quarterback at that time, if you all recall that. And I don't believe he did too good of a job when he went to New Orleans after that, did he?
No. Started off on a bad foot by trading like all their draft picks for Ricky Williams, and they just couldn't really get out of like a 5-6 win sort of hurdle there.
Never forget that Sports Illustrated cover of him in the wedding dress
with Ricky Williams. Now, Dave, before we let you go, what's the final score for tonight's Detroit Lions Minnesota game?
I either think it'd be like what we just got done with in with the Bears and Packers, because they all know each other so well, or it's going to be like the Buffalo game and be a shootout.
Either way, my friend, I hope you enjoy the game, and I hope you enjoy a playoff run.
I hope like hell that these guys go on, and win for Martha Firestone Ford, and in fact, on the other little gal, they said that today is Virginia McCaskey's birthday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Virginia's 102. Happy birthday, Virginia!
What a great way to win.
All right, Dave.
All right, guys. Thanks. Have a good one, and go Lions, guys. Go Lions.
Go Lions.
Thank you, Dave. Have a great one. But there's a few things, and we got a couple more callers we want to hit on. But Dave brought up some points. I think the big thing for Ben Johnson is he did pass up the job with Washington last year. There's only so many NFL jobs that open up every year, and there's only so many times that they're going to offer it to you. Where's Eric Bieniemy? Like, there are names that you hear come through the cycle that just come and go, and you got to strike when the iron's hot.
We already know one opening. Jared Mayo fired by the Patriots.
That is surprising. After one season, Robert Kraft moving on for Mayo.
And won in his final game, but, meaningless victory, 5 wins, I think, for them as well.
So does that mean with them, where they're going to end up in the draft with a Drake May? So you have your quarterback, you're going to have a high draft pick, you have a successful ownership. Is that a landing place for a Mike Vrabel, for a Ben Johnson? And I also think, too, the big game tonight, you mentioned it, and a shout out to you, how important, if you're Brian Flores, if you're the coaching staff in Detroit with Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn, right? You got to win, and you get a chance for an early interview. But who else do we have on the phone? Do we have some other callers?
We got one more. We got Jim from Chicago.
Jim.
We got other people calling in. I just haven't gotten a chance to screen them yet.
No.
And please, give us a call, 773-763-9278. We want to hear your thoughts.
This is the time. It is an open. We have opened the funeral home as we eulogize the Chicago Bears here on the Sports Cubicle. It's Devin Tingle. It's Paul Shivari. I'm Mike Mercado. And Jim, a Bears win. Lambeau Field to end the season. Caleb Williams owns all the rookie quarterback records. 5-12 on the season. Not so much fun, but a fun victory when you get it. What do you got, my friend?
First of all, I think that they were the biggest dog all season. They were 10.5-point dogs in this game. I don't know what the money line was, but also very juicy. But what the thing that they have to really improve is they've got to get the first quarter has been a miserable situation. We haven't scored any points in the first quarter. We rarely go into the lead except for today, but it's a different team. I've been watching the Bears since Brian's been watching since '69. I've been watching since '60. I watched the '63 championship. But the point is, the Bears with the lead, they get more physical with the lead. For some reason, I think any team's like that. I think if you looked over the history of football, if you're ahead, if you can get 7 to 10 points ahead early, they couldn't get a lead all year. The first quarter was always a dead quarter for them. And that's what they've got to figure out going into the next season. They've got to get some points on the board early. I don't know if you guys agree on that, but
Jim, I think you're 100% correct. Because think about this, especially when you have a rookie quarterback and an offensive scheme with Shane Waldron this season. How many times you were behind the 8 ball? How many times your defense was trying to make up for a bad start, and you knew you were going to be down?
Right, and you're overdoing everything. But the point is, the Bears, you got a good. They played the Packers even, let's say, both games. They were both even games, which is encouraging. But the point is, I think they'll figure it out. The new coaches, whoever it's going to be, he's got to figure out how in the heck do we come out of the gate a little faster than we did last year. That's all, because I know that we can even up the season when we can figure that out.
And the thing,
anyway,
Jim,
yeah, go ahead.
And the thing is, Jim, do you feel better this? Because when we brought Matt Eberflus in, this team was pretty much a bleep and train wreck here. Now, whoever they bring in now has pretty much all the tools to succeed with just a few holes point out here now. So do you feel this is a place that maybe more coaches are going to be willing to want to go as opposed to Matt Eberflus, who's probably the guy who answered the phone?
I'm sure they will, because the point is, they know the history of the Bears. The Bears, if they could get the lead on you, they're a very dangerous team. But from behind, if you're in the half and you're behind 10 points or 15 points, whatever you're down by, the whole complexion of the game changes. But I think that'll be the coach's biggest job, is to try to get points early in these games. Anyway, you guys have a great show, and thanks a million, guys. Thank you.
Happy New Year, Jim. Thank you so much for joining us, bud. So, we are eulogizing Chicago Bears. We've had some great calls. Josh Buckholter has joined us. And as we get ready for the 5 o'clock hour, because it's been a busy few days in the world of sports here in Chicago and nationally, we are here on the Sports Cubicle. It's Devin Tingle, Paul Shivari, I'm Mike Mercado, WCPT 820 Chicago, and of course, HeartlandSignal.com. You can check us out on YouTube at the Sports Cubicle. Give us a call. Text us at 773-763-9278. And currently on YouTube at WCPT 820. Leave a chat so we can be interactive and talk about the final game of the season for the Chicago Bears. And as we wrap up what I would say frustrating yet intriguing season of the Chicago Bears, Devin, I think I want to run this by you. Regardless of what happened, I think it was a successful season for Caleb.
Very much so, because this kind of reminded me a lot of, was this 3 years ago when they finished 3-14 in Justin Fields' rookie season? It's very much one of those things where it's like, granted, we all came in here thinking they're going to have a winning record for the first time, and good question. But now seeing this team, we saw a lot from Caleb Williams here. I actually pulled up his stats, Mercado, because there was 1 year off about. Let's just take a look here by the numbers. I'm going to go through his career, which is also the same as this season. Mind-blowing. So, 333 completions out of 533 attempts. That's insane. Quarterback completion percentage of 61.9. 3,393 yards. I don't know if this is Caleb Williams. I like number 3 a lot. You were off by 1, Mercado. He has 19 touchdowns instead of 20, which is still, he was projected for 20, so that's not really a bad thing. Go 6 interceptions and only 1 interception in the last 5 games. I literally think if you're a Bears quarterback, you know how it's it's Mr. Irrelevant when you're drafted last in the draft. Your Bears quarterback can be Mr. Interception because they throw so dang many of them here. And that's just one of those things. He has an 87.4 rating, Mercado. When was the last time we saw a quarterback with that?
They just updated it. It's 20 touchdowns.
It is 20 touchdowns after today. Thank you, Mercado.
Yeah. No, continue your point. No,
facts matter, CPT. Yeah. But it's one of those things where this is the thing. It's a lot more entertaining because with Fields, we didn't have a big win streak at all. I mean, yeah, 3 games in a row is nothing, but they only won 3 games that year as together here. And Caleb's, beat the Packers, but we're also way more close in a lot of these games than we were during the Fields era. And I'm not trying to poo-poo on Justin Fields here, but we're definitely seeing. This is the thing. When you have a rookie quarterback, I mean, you're not all going to have the RG3 year or the Jaden Daniels year. It must be some rookie quarterback quarterback in Washington. You got to go to the playoffs right away. But, we have to see this here. And now we're seeing what works with a guy like Caleb Williams and how he's going to work with this team here, because it is clear we're seeing this. This isn't in 3 or 4 years we're going to go and draft whoever the heck next, Peyton Manning's kid or Tom Brady's kid or whoever the big name is in the next 4 or 5 years, and not repeat the Bears cycle of just trying something new and throwing doo-doo to the wall to see what sticks here. We found the quarterback. We found the kid. And he stayed healthy. How many times has this man been sacked? It's close to 70, Mercado. And he started and completed all 17 games. Not even 16, 17. Because they had to add that one extra one here. But that's the thing about this. When you have a quarterback, you need to see how it's going to work with him. And you have a couple years to see if he's the piece here. And Mercado, I think it's safe to say Caleb Williams is the future of the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, what I'm more interested in beyond Caleb Williams and his development next year, where your coaching staff comes from, Ryan Poles, if he comes back next season, if you look at it, and Josh brought up a great point that we have to give his flowers, his props for all the great moves that he did make. Because if we're going to sit here and say the Bears got their franchise quarterback, it's because of Ryan Poles and the moves he made. But a lot of the guys that were brought in as free agents or highly scouted or reached or thought of to be projects by Ryan Poles has backfired more often than not. And I still am somebody who believes you can draft a left tackle in the 3rd round like they did as a project. You can't draft a punter as good as Taylor has been in the 4th round when you have things you need to work on, when you know you need an offensive line. Don't forget, Ryan Poles went into this season talking up how much he loved the offensive line and what they had. They believed in it. This team had Nate Davis at one point. They went out of their way to get him. I don't know if I trust Ryan Poles in all of scouting. I don't know if Ryan Poles, they know how to scout secondary, corners and safeties. They know how to do that. But do I trust a general manager who went out the first thing in his free agency and got a running back? But not just a running back that for the money he was paid and how highly acclaimed they talked about him, how much of a difference did somebody like DeAndre Swift made compared to if you had spent the money somewhere on the defensive line, somewhere on the offensive line, somewhere to help with blocking? Speaking of that, what happened with Gerald Everett, Mercedes Lewis? Every time we hear one of these names, it's a flag being thrown out on the field. This team went into scouting its team backwards. And then you look at the way that they went through a coaching hire. They decided Shane Waldron was a better offensive coordinator than Thomas Brown. They were the team that gave Matt Eberflus a head coaching job when he was going to be fired by the Indianapolis Colts. So while I may love what Ryan Poles did to Carolina, what he did to get Rome Odunze and Caleb Williams to the Bears, drafting Darnell Wright, too many times the decisions made by Ryan Poles has cost his team. Whether it has been by player evaluation or the people he has hired. So now I'm supposed to sit here and trust the same person who thought Shane Waldron was a better hire than Thomas Brown and thought Matt Eberflus was the right head coach in a coaching carousel that had Jim Harbaugh. And now I'm supposed to give him all my trust when I now know that the quarterback they have can be successful in the NFL?
But the one thing I do want to bring up, Mercado, here is, according to Bears Wire, close to 30 Bears players' contracts are up and will be free agents after this season. And it makes you really wonder now, how are they going to rebuild this team here? Are we going to be re-signing a lot of people? Are we going to blow this whole thing up and bring new people in? And the question is, do we want to start fresh with a new GM, or do we want Ryan Poles to be the guy in charge here? Because I can't remember last time they had this many guys slated to be free agents.
So I think regardless in the NFL, it's a quick turnaround, right? Like the roster, there is so much turnover. You're in a spot right now where a lot of your stars, defensively, offensively, are still under contract, and more importantly, your rookie quarterback's on his rookie deal. But that's where we're going to find out, whether it's later today on a Sunday, whether it's on Black Monday. It is important to know what the Bears, what Kevin Warren, what the McCaskies want to do with Ryan Poles. I don't advocate for anybody to ever lose their job. Nobody should.
You're a better man than I am.
You shouldn't. There's only so many of these jobs. They're hard jobs. Only one team gets to win a Super Bowl. But I also understand that a the Bears need to do something that the great teams do. Not just pretend that you're one of them, not live off your legacy. The great teams win within the margins. They get the best out of players. They scout players that other teams aren't. They get coaches that get the best out of their players. They have people in their marketing staff that make their team look good. Their training staff keeps their players healthy. Their nutrition staff keeps them well fed. These are things that great organizations do that we don't hear about. And then the things we do see on the field: game management, clock management, awareness, communication. These are things Bears fans continuously ask for. Whether it was from Ryan Pace, Ryan Poles, Jerry Angelo, you name who you want. Phil Emery. That is all Bears fans have been asking for since 2010. And they use, because it's a simple way of saying leader of men, leadership. What you're just asking for is somebody to be competent at their job. And while Ryan Poles has done some special things in the most important decisions that he has had to make, more specifically, the hiring process of the head coach was a big, fat F. And Caleb Williams, because you ended up at number 1 and got the quarterback, should not excuse because he's a good player, excuse your past sins. Now, if they decide to bring him back, I can go down the road and understand of you want to be some form of cohesiveness. You don't want to be the organization that is constantly firing coaches, GMs. So if Ryan Poles is brought back, if come Black Monday, he is the general manager, everybody, Kevin Warren down. It is on them. Whether it is a success or failure, falls on them now. If they don't win a division, if they don't get over 500, if anybody gets hurt, it is on them because they have now made that decision that they're entrusting their entire franchise, the quarterback that is going to help them build a multi-billion-dollar stadium. That investment comes down to the decision that's going to be made because this is going to be the key player in putting it all together. But we want to know your thoughts at 773-763-9278. The Chicago Bears go to Green Bay and beat the Packers 24-22, 5-12 on the season. We're here on WCPT 820 and Heartland Signal. I'm your host, Mike Mercado. He is Devin Tingle. He is Paul Shavari. But we got a lot of other stuff coming up on this edition. We have some Derrick Rose talk. We have some NFL playoffs. And another fun surprise to end the show, Lions and Vikings. Stay tuned. You don't want to miss what we have coming up. Paulie?
We got Derrick Rose, college football playoff. Marver is probably going to call in, and we'll talk about the Winter Classic, which I don't think there was anything really eventful to talk about. Yeah, the Titanic.
I'm talking Marver.
So Marver on the Titanic. I didn't even know that was him.
I know, it looks just like Jack Dawson.
Paulie, before we hit the break, I just wanted to throw it to you, though, putting the Bears to rest. Any, I guess, final thoughts on what you saw here in Chicago week to week? You heard so many post-game shows. You saw so many different interviews we've done. Anything kind of to put a bow on it from your perspective on the 2024 campaign that was, definitely not what you would call success, but there were successes within it. Your kind of thoughts to put it to rest, the 2024 Bears.
Yeah, they were horribly underprepared, and hopefully they can get set straight. There's too many, taking timeouts at weird times or not taking timeouts at times where they should have, not being prepared with plays, not really having sort of like in-game sort of adjustments that they need to make. So I can't wait to see what they do in the offseason. And I think they should keep Ryan Poles. I think he's earned at least one more season, one more coaching change. My hope was that maybe Matt Eberflus wasn't his first choice last time around, and perhaps this time around ownership will give him a little bit more leeway if that was the case. So we'll see. We'll see what he does. But I know you're big on Ben Johnson. I'm bigger on like the Pete Carroll, sort of get somebody that's been there, kind of been there, done that sort of guy rather than a guy just starting out. But it'd be so Bears if they just kind of bring in a Ben Johnson or a unproven coordinator.
And one thing about Pete Carroll is look at his quarterback development. I mean, look at Russell Wilson on the Seahawks versus on the Broncos. Look at Geno Smith anywhere else versus on the Seahawks. And granted, Geno Smith out Pete Carroll still performing quite well. But I must say, it's like if you want a head coach who knows how to work with a quarterback and you have a rookie quarterback who's the future of this team, I think he'd be one of the best bets to get.
So I think that's interesting. Pete Carroll may be the only 70-plus-year-old where you could be like, no, he's a legit young soul, young spirit. But I think normal Bears, Ben Johnson, I'm with you. More years than not, they would go after the unknown, unproven coordinator and spend no money. But this is the rare year where the unknown, proven coordinator is kind of the consensus top candidate. So are the Bears doing a Bears thing, or are they not, where they got the best candidate or they got the unproven one? Again, the Bears have worked themselves into such a Bear scenario where either way, they may get their guy, but he's an unproven guy. So we'll see how it plays out for them, and they're going to have to cough up the money. But
if they're the White Sox, they just remove the interim tag off of the current guy, but I don't think that's the move either.
Well, and on that note, we're going to move on from Chicago Bears talk, but we promise you no threats. There won't be any White Sox talk in the 5 o'clock hour. We're going to talk Derrick Rose, his big day at the United Center, and what that means for the city of Chicago. The marvelous one, Dan Marver, will call in. Winter Classic, college football. Who else knows what that man is thinking about? So we'll talk to him. Of course, we're going to have ourselves a new friend of the show, joining us as we talk NFL playoffs and Lions at Vikings. He's Devin Tingle. He's Paul Shavari. I'm Mike Mercado. We're here on WCPT 820 at Heartland Signal. It is the Sports Cubicle.
This is a WCPT moment in labor. With the United Auto Workers returning back to work, one might think all is good for auto workers. Although one company that has been refusing to unionize is Tesla. Elon Musk has made his anti-union stances clear as he has interrogated employees, disciplining, discriminating, and, as he once said on Twitter, threatening to fire any Tesla employee who tries to unionize, which he did by firing 30 employees in the Buffalo plant. Now, though, it might be coming back to bite him, as Sweden dock workers are refusing to unload Tesla vehicles. 90% of the Swedish workforce is union and want good regulation on all companies. Now, Elon Musk can either complain about this on X and lose the Swedish market, or can allow his employees to unionize. Oh, sweet karma. This has been a WCPT moment in labor. We are working for your rights.
Dive deeper into the heart of the news and stories at WCPT 820 and across the Midwest by checking out our website, heartlandsignal.com.
It's the coverage I can count on every time.
For the latest news updates, in-depth analysis, compelling stories, comprehensive election coverage, live streams, and thought-provoking opinions, head to heartlandsignal.com.
When I need to know, they're there.
They keep me informed and updated wherever I am.
Stay informed with WCPT 820, your go-to source for where facts matter.
NBC News Radio, I'm Chris Coraggio.
The FBI says the man who drove into a crowd on Bourbon Street on New Year's Day traveled to Egypt and Canada in 2023. Lisa Carton reports.
Investigators said while U.S. Army veteran Shamsuddin Jabbar likely acted alone, they're still trying to determine if he met with anyone while he was abroad and if the trips were connected to the attack. Jabbar also reportedly traveled to New Orleans twice before the attack and took video along Bourbon Street. In the hours before, authorities also say he placed multiple improvised explosives around the city and set a fire inside the home he was renting nearby. The attack killed 14 people, and Jabbar died in a shootout with police after he opened fire on them and the crowd.
The counting and certification of the electoral vote of the 2024 election will take place tomorrow at the U.S. Capitol. Officials have beefed up security on the grounds of the Capitol, including adding patrols, extra officers, and collaborating with outside partner agencies. The U.S. Capitol Police issued a statement citing the heightened threat environment in recent years, adding, "We cannot take any chances when it comes to protecting members of Congress." Americans are saying their final goodbyes to former President Jimmy Carter. Crowds filed past his casket at the Carter Center in Atlanta for a second day today. On Tuesday, the late president and his family will travel to Washington, D.C., where he'll be taken by horse-drawn carriage to the U.S. Capitol for a ceremony at the Capitol Rotunda. He will then line state and a funeral will be held Thursday at Washington National Cathedral. Students in Ramsey, New Jersey will go phone-free as they return to class this week from winter break. A new policy requires phones and other devices to be stored in special locked pouches during the school day. They can only be unlocked in designated areas such as the cafeteria. Parents who need to reach their kids will have to leave a message at the office, according to NorthJersey.com. Ramsey School Superintendent Dr. Andrew Mateo says a phone-free school day will help students focus on learning.
I'm Chris Carraggio, NBC News Radio.
This is Chicago's Progressive Talk, 820 AM, WCPT Willow Springs, and online at WCPT820.com, where facts matter. The Hal Sparks radio program.
Walmart's financial chief, John David Rainey, said tariffs are going to be inflationary. There is no disputing that. Walmart has said these costs are going to be passed on to the consumer. 60 to 70% of the things that are in your local Walmart come from China. It might as well be an Alibaba outlet store. And they're about to find out the hard way.
Hal Sparks, Saturdays from 11 to 1 on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk. This is WCPT 820, where facts matter.
It's the Sports Cubicle, WCPT 820. I'm your host, Mike Mercado. I'm here with Devin Tingle, with Paul Shavari, the marvelous one, Dan Marver, will be joining us in just a second. A fast first hour. We put to rest the Chicago Bears, the 2024 Chicago Bears, as they beat the Green Bay Packers in Green Bay. It was a 24-22 victory, 5-12 on the season. A quick comment that we see from our friends over on YouTube. Go to the YouTube at WCPT 820, and after the show, go to our YouTube at the Sports Cubicle. If you missed one of our interviews or any of our segments, this is from Darrow. Packers played a good game. They only lost by 2 points. With Watson injured, I think they need to sign an experienced wide receiver who had some time playing in the postseason. Jordan Love is definitely one of those quarterbacks that's hit or miss, and getting him a really good wide receiver and some of the free agents that might be hitting the market this year, Green Bay would be very dangerous, especially in the division like the NFC North, to get as many weapons as possible. And speaking of weapons, there was no greater weapon on the court than the hops, the electricity, the aura that was brought in by number one, Derrick Rose, on the Chicago Bulls. That rookie season, that playoff series against Boston, that conference finals against Miami, the MVP season, the All-NBA, All-Rookie, and then the heartbreak of the knee injuries. Derrick Rose is one of these stories that maybe it's just a local thing, whatever city it is. It's the boyhood dream come true of living out what you thought was never possible. Being the number one overall pick to your dream team, your hometown team, and becoming the face of the league when LeBron James was playing with you, when Kevin Durant was playing with you, when Steph Curry was playing with you. Derrick Rose, I think for a lot of people, and Josh brought it up in the first hour, if you're talking about the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame, where everybody gets in, I can understand the argument of saying Derrick maybe doesn't belong, maybe he does. If he does, that lowers the Mendoza line, whatever your argument may be. But when it comes to, in my opinion, the number one jersey in the Chicago Bulls lexicon is beyond touch, I think. What he meant for that team, what he did for that team post Michael Jordan, what he did for basketball in Chicago cannot be undersold. Basketball is Chicago. Chicago is basketball. And he did it at Simeon, wearing that famous 25 Benji jersey. This is all stuff that I think matters. And for me, whether it was that 50-point game in Minnesota, those games at the Garden, and obviously all the great moments that we've seen from Derrick here in Chicago, I don't think there's anybody more deserving for that honor of having seen his name and jersey number up in the rafters than Derrick Rose. Paulie, you and I have talked about it. I mean, I was in high school. You were a little bit older of those at 08, 09, 2010, 2011 run.
But we knew each other for about half that run that he had with the Bulls.
It was electric.
Like at the peak of it, we kind of met each other around then. And how many times we've talked about this cat? Like,
it's the Allen Iverson effect, right? You and I have always talked about just the electricity, the aura, the moment in time it was to have Derrick play for the Bulls at the United Center.
And like, he really was like the true definition of like a Chicago kid that made it big and played for the Bulls. And it's unfortunate the knee injury, and who knows what what would have happened that year, that playoff run, if he would have been healthy for it. That could have been the year maybe that they made it to the finals, or at least gave the Heat enough trouble. But he did win an MVP, youngest MVP in the league. He did win Rookie of the Year. Those first 4 seasons before the injury were amazing. It wasn't even like he quietly came into the league. He was loud when he came into the league, and he made an impact right away. And you saw, I think there's like a video montage with like LeBron and D Wade and guys like that talking about Rose and his impact. So I think, he was a contemporary of those guys who were great players in that era. I'm trying to remember if Rose played on any of the Olympic teams. Was he on?
Yes. Yeah, I believe he was on the Olympic team.
But it was the 2016, or it wasn't 2012, because that would have been the injury, right? And then the 2000. Yeah, it's got to be the 2016.
Top of mind, I believe so.
But it would have been neat if he was on the Barcelona or the London.
Devin.
Oh, you looked like you had it.
I'm not seeing anything for the Olympics.
I think it would have popped up right away.
I'm seeing World Cup though.
Okay.
Yeah, that adds up because he would have been on those teams. And it's interesting you bring up the LeBron and Dwayne Wade thing, because shout out to the Chicago Bulls. They made a great presentation and they made a great video package for Derrick. I think they did an awesome job. And only Jerry Reinsdorf of the Bulls will be like, here's a ceremony announcing the jersey retirement. Like a very Jerry Reinsdorf thing for him to do.
Got to sell tickets somehow.
But it was a matter of when and not if. I mean, we always knew, and it's like, I don't know, is there any reason why they're doing it right away and not waiting a long time?
Probably because the team is not good, and you need to sell the CHSN app,
but it was inevitable anyway, so why not just do it?
Because
don't wait until it's like too late. You know what I'm saying?
But, Paul, how long did it take the White Sox to retire Mark Burley and Paul Konerko's numbers? Those are both fairly quick, too.
Not long at all. And
I don't, with Rose now,
and
too.
I don't know if that was, is that the Reinsdorfian method of pleasing the fans? Is just because you'd had to wait a long time for the previous ones.
And like how exclusive it is specifically for the Bulls, that only, Sloan,
Love, Scotty Michael... And now Rose, right?
Yeah, and I don't think 91 is retired now, just top of mind. So,
and I think Russell's retired league wide, right? Maybe 6?
I believe so.
Okay.
I don't know top of mind, but I think I understand people's argument about Rose. I think I do. I understand that you can have a certain kind of criticism of this type of accolation, but I think there's a difference between having your jersey retired and being in the Hall of Fame. And more specifically, Kerry Wood. Is Kerry Wood a Hall of Famer?
No. But does Kerry Wood deserve to have his number retired? Is it retired?
I believe 34 is retired.
But it's only because someone else holds it too, right?
Top.
I don't think. See, this is
the trivia question. This is why I wouldn't be on trivia, because
live trivia. I don't think his number is retired.
No, because John Lester wore 34.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go. So, that would be my question is, because Kerry Wood, what it is Kerry Wood has all the memorabilia of his 20 strikeouts, and they
But I think he said it, though. I think you do the joint John Lester and Kerry Wood and just retire 34, right?
So where is the line, I guess, is where I'm saying for Derrick, because if it's a jersey retirement, it's not a Hall of Fame. It's an acknowledgement of your team.
He means a lot to
That's
the
what
Bulls
I'm
franchise
saying. So
and
it's
the
okay.
city of Chicago, and I think we all expected this to happen.
But there is a pushback as if it is the Hall of Fame, where... And first of all, we're talking about the Naismith Hall of Fame. We're not talking about the baseball or NFL Hall of Fame. Anybody can get into the Naismith Hall of Fame because it includes your college, your high school, your pro basketball
contributions
to the league, But Derrick Rose's impact specifically to the Chicago Bulls, what he did on the court and what he meant off the court, if the organization wants to honor him like that, and the way they do it is by retiring his jersey, I'm okay with it. I don't think there should be an argument with it. It's just them acknowledging one of their most famous players, one of their most impactful players. Think about how many memories in the NBA lore Derrick Rose is on. Dragic, what are you doing? Christmas Day against the Lakers. That Christmas commercial with the jingle and shooting three-pointers. The All-Star game when they're all dancing and he's the only one that's not. The time where LeBron James and Dwayne Wade, the only player they were worried about was Derrick Rose. The NBA 2K commercial of Kobe Bryant and Derrick Rose talking to each other. Derrick Rose is in NBA lore. Everybody crying when he scores 50 points in Minnesota after all the injuries. We have seen great players like Brandon Roy never play because they don't have knees. We have seen great careers end because of Achilles, because of ankles, because of backs. And this guy, the rose from the concrete of the hood, becomes this superstar, international. He is Elvis in China. And all that to me equals, number one is the modern-day great Bulls player. And I think he deserves to have that jersey up in the rafters. But we want to know your thoughts. 773-763-9278. Of course, on YouTube at The Sports Cubicle. Check us on the YouTube at WCPT.
I think one of the neat things about his career, too, after he left the Bulls, I think everyone thinks that he was just a shell of himself after the injury. And arguably, he was so impactful, such a high rate of play, the speed of and almost recklessness that he played before he got injured, but it worked for him. But he was actually in top 20 in points per 36 minutes and assists per 36 minutes in his 2019-2020 season. He had only 3 seasons in his career where he was in the top 20, notably in those categories, obviously before the injury with the Bulls. But I didn't realize, that late into his career, which I think he was still with the Knicks by that point, Detroit. It was Detroit. He had such an amazing season with them that which I don't remember that. I don't remember that specific season.
He was in
with
Memphis.
Detroit. Yeah, I remember kind of he bounced around, but I don't remember specifically the 2019-2020 season with Detroit was that impactful.
And how great he was in high school, and that run and that finals between Memphis and Kansas. Again, Derrick Rose is part of basketball lore.
Is Mr. Illinois basketball, I think, in 2006.
Tyus, the big controversy or debate, Michael Beasley or Derrick Rose. He has been part of so much of the conversation of basketball that to ignore his part in the story, I think, give him his flowers now. Nobody's saying he deserves a plaque in Cooperstown, but his jersey retired in his hometown? Yeah, why not?
Absolutely.
So, we want to know your thoughts. If you have any thoughts, make sure you guys leave a comment down below if you're listening to the YouTube channel over at The Sports Cubicle or at WCPT 820 for the live version. Give us a call. Text us, 773-763-9278. And we are about to go to the Oracle himself, the marvelous one, Dan Barber, here on the WCPT Heartland Signal. It's Devin Tingle. It's Paul Shivari. I'm Mike Mercado. Marvelous. What is going on, my friend? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you loud and clear, buddy.
Too. Oh, good. Thank you for the acknowledgement of the Titanic with regard to the Bears. And I really didn't want to cover the Winter Classic, but I thought it would have been interesting to have the Bears play the Winter Classic in Seattle on ice. It might have been more interesting.
I'm fully for that. We need to have a Winter Classic in the NFL.
I think there might have been just as many points scored in both of those games.
Yeah, and I really felt at home here as a Southern Illinois State game because the head coach for Southern Illinois is named Aggie.
All right, Marvelous. So what has you going? Because we obviously spent the first hour talking about the Chicago Bears, the win in Green Bay, but you've had a lot of stuff that you've been going on. Obviously, you're down south in a hometown matchup, but what are you into? Are you into college football right now? Do you want to talk Winter Classic? What has really kind of got you going to start the new year?
Yeah. Well, the Winter Classic was another Chicago embarrassment. It was the biggest blowout in Winter Classic history. What was it, 5-1 or something like that? There was another Chicago embarrassment. But I really think we should talk about the CFP because how interesting is it? The top 4 seeds in this brand new plan all got beat. So in other words, now we got Penn State, Notre Dame, Ohio State, and Texas are left. In the old format, that never would have happened, and it makes it more interesting. The bye, I guess, isn't very helpful, as has been proven in other sports like baseball, even. And so, they've made it more interesting. Now they have the orange and the cotton as the semifinals. As you know, the rose and the sugar will never be the semifinals. They'll always be the quarterfinals because they can't move them off the sacred January 1st date. But next Thursday and Friday, we've got the semifinals, and then on January 20th, we'll have the championship game just before February embarks. But they'll be a little ahead of the NFL playoffs, but not by much. But it should be very interesting. That Texas-Ohio State game could be great. And it's funny how good Michigan looks now, having beaten Ohio State and Alabama in their last two games. That's kind of interesting to me, too.
And before we move on any further about the college football players, we obviously want to send our condolences and obviously our well wishes to everybody down in New Orleans on Bourbon Street. That absolutely horrifying terrorist attack, the loss of life from what we saw down there the day before Notre Dame and Georgia, I think at the Super Bowl. So obviously our hearts to start. What a horrible way to start the New Year's, but we'd be amiss if we didn't bring that up. We're going to be having fun talking about college football, the serious situation that happened last week. So we wanted to make sure we give our thoughts that a horrible situation that happened down in New Orleans. But Marvelous, you brought it up. It's a chance for an all Big Ten championship game. Notre Dame, Penn State, Ohio State, Texas. What would you want to watch? Do you want to see Notre Dame? Do you want to see Texas? I mean, these are all blue bloods. These are all teams that have huge fan bases. They're all going to travel well. Who do you want to see in the finals?
Well, I think it would be. I mean, I think Texas has had the best overall season of the remaining teams, oddly. So Texas and Penn State might be the best two teams left, honestly. But Notre Dame had quite a season, even though they lost to Northern Illinois, who just joined the Mountain West, where they're going to be playing a regular home-and-home series with Hawaii, which makes a lot of sense to me, by the way.
Hey, well, let me ask you this. Texas survives Arizona State. And Arizona State has this crazy game. A new superstar is made. But did Texas survive their nightmare game, their trap game? Is it now going to be easy sailing for them? Did Ohio State win the big game by rolling over and destroying Oregon? Like, is everything going to play out perfectly for Texas to get to the finals, as well as Notre Dame, who lost to Northern this year, is going to find a way to a college football championship game?
Yeah, well, there's an argument both ways. I mean, because now Ohio State has avenged their loss to Oregon, and they've gotten the loss to that what they call that team up north out of their mind, hopefully, and now they can move forward. But the problem is the game is going to be essentially a home game for Texas, being in Dallas, or whatever city it is now where they play it. But it's going to be a pretty good home crowd for Texas against Ohio State, so that could favor Texas a bit. And I think that Penn State, Notre Dame will be in the Orange Bowl, so it'll be neutral court. But I believe that Penn State actually has a better team than Notre Dame, and I expect that would be the result, Texas versus Penn State. But again, who thought you had the top four seeds would all lose? I mean, I think Boise State and Arizona State were seeded too high, but Georgia and obviously Oregon were favorites, and they just didn't come through in the quarterfinals. So I don't know. I mean, it kind of has a nice vibe, like the NCAA basketball tournament in a way, but it's obviously more spread out. So it's a nice thing to do, but it turned out that the first round games were all blowouts, and now they talked about record-setting win totals. Well, that's ridiculous too, because you're going to play maybe 4 more games than you've ever played before. So I think it'll be worth watching the Orange Bowl and the Cotton Bowl myself, and I think that up till now the entertainment value has been mixed because they had so many blowouts. I mean, the overtime game, the Georgia game was interesting. So I don't know. It's I like. I'm a big college sports proponent, even though they all get paid now. But don't get me started.
Well, do you want reseeding when it comes to after every round? Are you more interested in that, where after every single round, or are you more interested in conference championships shouldn't matter. It's just the rankings and even the automatic bids that our seedings aren't dependent on that.
Right. I think that obviously Arizona State was overseeded as the winner of the Big 12, and the other one, they had to put SMU in, who Southern Methodist and Dallas, of course, being the conference champion of the Atlantic Coast Conference. But don't get me started on that either.
Oh, let me ask you this one. All right, I got one for you. We're going to leave you this on this one, Marver, because we still have a jam-packed edition. We have a brand new friend joining the show in just a few moments, hopefully to break down some Bears, some Vikings and Lions. But Northern Illinois is making a move, and it's a sad one to me. They are leaving the MAC, my favorite MAC, MAC Wednesdays, MAC Thursdays. I miss them, and they're going to the Mountain West. So a big win against Notre Dame, a football program that is pretty respected for the mid market that they are. What are your thoughts on NIU moving to the Mountain West?
Well, I think they'll be sorry they did. I don't know what their travel budget is, but they're going to have a regular, like I was mentioning earlier, home-and-home series with Hawaii, and the nearest schools are going to be in Colorado. So, I mean, they thought they had travel problems. They were complaining about all the games they played in Ohio in their old conference. That's going to be nothing compared to this. It makes no sense, but neither does the Atlantic Coast Conference at the moment with California and Stanford in there. But it's a whole new world out there. I think NIU's done this before. They went to the Big West, many of you will remember, years ago. They've left the MAC before and come back. So, I mean, the problem's going to be the other sports. Okay, the MAC doesn't take, non-football teams. They play 10 members. So now they're going to end up in the Horizon League. Or Ohio Valley Conference for basketball. Or my best bet, which they may not be welcome, would be the Missouri Valley Basketball Conference, because the Missouri Valley football is a separate conference from the other Missouri Valley. So at least in that conference, they'd have the two teams I saw today, Illinois State and Southern, as natural rivals along with UIC. So that would be the best place for them. But they have to pay $2 million if the board approves it this week, and to get into the Mountain West to travel, 3 hours by plane minimum to all their games. So I don't get they think they're gonna have a better chance at a bowl game. I don't know, maybe because the Mountain West got depleted. A lot of their schools went to the newly reconfigured Pac-12, like San Diego State and Fresno and others. So I don't know. Maybe they will get to a bowl game, but anybody that's 6-6 gets to a bowl game anyway, and even 5-7 now, because there's more opportunities because of the playoffs. There are teams that are playing multiple games in bowl games, such as for example, Penn State and Ohio State, and that makes more room for others. But I don't know. They've done this before, so it's obviously something they like to do to get out of the MAC. But I think it hurts their overall brand because they're going to play the other sports in probably the Horizon League, which seems like a step down to me.
So how long until you think it becomes a 16-team playoff?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think that the 12 worked well for them. The only thing that made me a little nervous was the fact that the first-round games were all on campuses, and they got lucky. Just imagine if it had been this weekend with the weather that they're having across the Midwest. I mean, I'm seeing a little bit of it right now, but there's 17 inches on the ground in Kansas City, apparently. So, I mean, can you imagine playing these games in the northern cities if that happened? They got lucky with Notre Dame and Penn State and such. So those were games that in Ohio State. Those were all games that were played a couple of weeks ago, and they got pretty good weather. So that's my only concern is to have more games on campus sites. But they'll figure that out. And I like the concept of having more teams. 16, I don't know. Then they would have been able to put Alabama in, who deserves it, and a few others. But then the top four don't get a bye, so there's no reward for that either. So I think 12 is where they're going to stick for a while.
I guess the other reward would be playing a snow day in Notre Dame, at Penn State, at Ohio State, if there's no buys. If that is the case, if that is what they're going to end up doing. But speaking of Ohio State, Marver, we're going to let you go. But before we let you go, it's time to make your predictions. Who do you have? Let's start this way, okay? Notre Dame, Penn State, in the Orange Bowl. Who wins?
Yeah. I feel that Penn State is going to win that game. I just, and for no particular reason other than I'm just looking at their overall body of work, like they say when they're seeding the NCAA basketball tournament.
And then the following day, the Ohio State Buckeyes, shout out Jerry Riles, versus the Texas Longhorns in the Cotton Bowl. Who wins?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Ohio State's on a roll, but I think Texas will win that game, believe it or not. And I just feel that home cooking will help them a little bit.
And in the national championship in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, Georgia, it will be the Penn State Nittany Lions versus the Texas Longhorns. Who wins the national championship?
I feel that Penn State is going to win the national championship this year. It's funny because with all the teams in the Big Ten, they didn't get to play some of the other power teams, such as Oregon, during the season, and that's one of the problems with these mega conferences. But I think they've been well tested, and I think that their overall body of work would indicate that they are in a good position to win, over Texas after they win the semifinal game. Also, ahead of that against Notre Dame. But those are tough games. They're all tough teams at this point. So anything's possible. That's my pick, and I'm sticking with it.
Marver, thank you so much. Safe travels. Happy New Year, and enjoy all the bowl games, my friend.
Will do. And as a tip to everybody, don't get anywhere near Interstate 70 right now. It's a disaster, so just stay where you are if you're heading that way, okay?
That's traffic. He's Dan Marver.
He does traffic. He does sports. He's the marvelous one. He is Dan Marver. Thank you, Marver.
Okay. See you live next time.
Take it easy, buddy. And we have a whole lot left on this edition. It's been a fast-paced show of the Sports Cubicle here on WCPT 820 and Heartland Signal. I'm your host, Mike Mercado. He is Devin Tingle. He is Paul Shivari. We got some NFL talk. It's playoff time, baby. Coming up next here on the Sports Cubicle.
Think Theory Radio.
We enter this world of hyper-reality. In case you didn't know, hyper-reality is the inability of consciousness to distinguish reality from a simulation of reality, especially in technologically advanced societies. The action of hyper-reality is to desire reality in an attempt to achieve that desire to fabricate a false reality that is to be consumed as real.
Think Theory Radio with Damian Perdue. Saturdays at 6 p.m. on WCPT 820. Out Chicago.
The media has been manipulated with propaganda and fear, and this is what has brought us where we are today. More than ever, people are looking at just one news source, and that's
what they're doing, they're looking at their
phones. Well, that's their source.
They are looking
that's their source.
Yeah, I know. They are looking at their phone. They are hearing opinion. They're hearing misinformation. They are not looking at sources.
Catch Out Chicago every Sunday, 11 to 1 on WCPT 820. You're listening to WCPT 820 because facts matter.
We are feeling good here on the Sports Cubicle, the last half hour of the Sports Cubicle. I'm your host, Mike Mercado. I am here with Devin Tingle, with Paul Shivari. We heard from the marvelous one, Dan Marver, earlier on today. We were able to talk Chicago Bears football, eulogizing the 2024 season. The Bears found a way to end the season with the victory, 24-22, against the Packers in Lambeau Field, 5-12 on the season. Josh Buckhalter from all over the universe broke it down, gave us the inside scoop from the locker room. But that is not the only important NFC North football going on today. That is not the only important football going on moving forward. Devin, for the awesome people that are around the water cooler here on the Sports Cubicle, what do we have for them heading into the final games of Week 18 and the sweet old playoffs of the NFL?
Well, I must say, the Bears and the NFC North are kind of a doo-doo show because Sunday Night Football has a 14-2 team taking on another 14-2 team. And with the Minnesota Vikings and the Detroit Lions, I could not think of anyone better to join us than our local Minnesota Vikings correspondent, Mr. New. Mr. New, thank you for joining us live this time around.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So, Mr. New, I just have to ask you here, do you feel right now if the Minnesota Vikings were to lose tonight, finish 14-3, be the third best record in all of NFL, and still have to play all their games on the road, playoff games on the road?
Yeah, just like everybody in Minnesota right now, I'm sure that either anybody that's been a longer fan, incredibly nervous, palms are sweaty style.
What about Mom Spaghetti?
It's left in Detroit, and hopefully they didn't. Hopefully they didn't get too hyped up and everything like that. Hopefully they can come into this one maybe just nice and mellow. But no, I just. It's going to be a hard one, and if we don't get the win, we still know we got the playoffs, but man, that win would sure be sweet.
And that's one thing I do want to talk about here, because the Vikings have been a surprise team out of nowhere here. I mean, especially having a guy that we didn't even think was going to be the quarterback going into the season. And the Detroit Lions, despite being all very banged up, are still putting on very high games here. Now, the one thing I do see about the Vikings is they have a very good defense that can keep teams to very low scores, but the offense is not getting up there to the 50-something points of the Detroit Lions here. Is there any big thing that you really need to watch for in this game, or that you as a Vikings fan are worried about?
Jahmyr Gibbs. So to me, Jahmyr Gibbs is in the running game and how they've built and structured that whole team. It's completely a working system, a wonderful machine. But as we've seen, some of the parts have been injured. They got a little banged up. So I think that is something that the Vikings could focalize on with the run game there. I think if they could stop Jahmyr Gibbs and make Jared Goff pass, because if you look at the last 4 games that they beat against the Vikings, they have a total of 8 touchdowns. So if you average that out, that's 2 a game. That is beatable. You know what I mean? A couple passing touchdowns with some field goals, But once they start getting that run game going, and the field goals and the pass game, and then we've seen how explosive JMO has gotten in this, as the season has gone on, as he's kind of broken out later in the year here. And it's those sorts of plays that, like they got to stop the splash plays, of course, but I think focalizing on that run, if they could stop that, I think they really could have a chance. Just make Jared Goff pocket pass.
Mr. New, it's nice to finally talk to you, and you're bringing up some interesting stuff. It's the matchup of the Lions and Vikings, and that means here in Chicago, we are paying attention to Ben Johnson versus Brian Flores. What is Brian Flores going to have to offset Jameson Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, Jahmyr Gibbs? Can Brian Flores disguise his blitz scheme? What can he do to keep Detroit in check? And more importantly, what can he do if they do lose this game, even if it's a solid performance, when the very next week you are taking on Tampa Bay and that crazy high-powered offense?
Right, and that's just the thing here, is it's one of those games, and you guys know in the NFC North how gritty these games can get, how brutal these games can get. You want to put it all on the line, but then again, you got games coming up afterwards if you don't get the bye week to rest that are right away. And so I think, Brian's going to have to, you've seen it all season, he's taken a line and a defense that a lot of people wrote a lot of these guys off, or they were just, I call them the scrappy dappy dudes, and just a bunch of ragtag crew that just all banded together under Brian, and you see kind of the undersized line and adjustments there where he's moving people up for the blitz, but then he's getting people back out into coverage, and they're all hitting their assignments, and that's going to be what will be key to stop that run. And then if everybody can hit their zone assignments or their passing block, whatever they're doing to defend the pass there, and make it so that Jared Goff has the pressure, so he can get that ball out, force him to pocket pass, and I think he'd stand a chance if he can do that.
So Aaron Glenn will be taking on Kevin O'Connell in the other matchup, and we heard from Jay Glazer today that Kevin O'Connell obviously waiting to see what the contract situation will be. More than likely, that rumor means that we'll be seeing an extension for the Minnesota head coach probably tomorrow morning. But what is that going to look like? What is the Minnesota offense with the star power they have from the emergence of Jordan Addison, and we've seen with Hawkinson, and we've seen with obviously JJ, and with Sam Darnold having a renaissance because of Kevin O'Connell? How is that going to look like, that matchup where you have this hot head coach right now that is the quarterback whisperer versus a defensive coordinator that is getting a lot of love for head coaching positions?
And you're absolutely right there with the energy that KOC brings and how him and Dan are both in that race for Coach of the Year there. And that's going to be a tight one, and it's going to have to be just like with what Brian brings. Brian's going to have to bring every trick in the book, like you guys were saying, in the last section, and KOC is going to have to bring every trick in the book, and they're going to have to be also firing on all cylinders, making every assignment. That offensive line is going to have to block perfectly, and the backs are going to have decent nights. There's going to have to be some sort of run game. I don't think you could just put this thing all on Sam's shoulders and say, just go out there and throw for 405 touchdowns. That's a tough assignment to do. So I think he's going to have to, and KOC is really brilliant at this, gelling and blending things in to push and pull different players off of other defenders so that you can get other players open, like your third wide receiver in Naylor, or like how we watched Addison. I don't know if you saw the one last week where Jefferson comes up and then clears the lane by moving left there, pulling the safety as well with him, so that way you get that clear backfield. And it's going to be, I think, also a thing that I really want to see them do, or hope that they can do successfully, is use the pass as an extension of the run, like we've seen some of these other teams do. Brady talks about it a lot, Tom Brady, and stuff about how you can utilize short passing game as well if you're not able to get anything going via just scrimmage on the ground.
What is Kevin O'Connell doing to be the quarterback whisperer that he has? We've seen it with Kirk Cousins. We've seen it now with Sam Darnold. We're seeing it there. Daniel Jones, the minute he gets cut, the first team he wants to go to after waivers is the Minnesota Vikings. There's this ultimate question coming up next year: J.J. McCarthy or Sam Darnold? And I obviously, if they give you roots or cover for the Vikings, you feel pretty comfortable, whoever's at quarterback, especially with the weapons and the way they've built that team. But what is it about this coaching staff that have made it such a safe haven, the way San Francisco is, for quarterbacks?
It is just a perfect environment to learn in, from what I can see. It is, you got not only Kevin O'Connell and everything that he brings to the table, but what I've noticed is Kwesi, the GM, also being he's an analytics guy, and he likes everything to kind of fit together. And it seems like the way him and KOC have formed this team, because they did have a rougher year last year, and there has been some rougher times, and it hasn't always been sunshine and rainbows for KOC, but it has been for the most part, because they really surround him with the things that work for him and success for him. So getting Josh McCown, somebody that he knows personally, and they all know personally, and then they can all sit in this quarterback room and talk together and learn together, and not really be enemies or looking across, oh man, you're going to take my job, or worrying about all these other things. And instead, the goal is Super Bowl and nothing more. And that's really, I think, what's also bringing it together too, is there's not a lot of distractions that are being allowed inside of that quarterback room with KOC and Josh McCown.
773-763-9278. If you have any questions for us or our guest, Mr. New, give us a call at 773-763-9278. Mr. New, it is very interesting now going back here and looking just at the past three games, looking at the Vikings and the Lions, how pretty much score-wise they are, I can't say the word I want to say, they're super similar, or blank for tat, very much going in here though. But a lot of people right now are kind of, the Lions been the favorite team pretty much all of this season here, and that could definitely kind of get a little bit into the hype there. But right now, what do you think as a if you were a Detroit Lions fan, what would you be most worried about this Minnesota Vikings team coming in to do?
I'd be worried about underestimating Sam Darnold. I feel like that is a easy thing to do. Even as a Vikings fan, a lot of people, it took a lot of people, a lot of proving, and Sam had to really prove a lot game after game. Like, we've kind of had some of these shows, and I've spoken about how the rushing game's been good at yards wise if you look at the yards, but the touchdowns versus fumbles, which is game turnover stuff, hasn't really been there. So when Sam's able to turn it on, he is quite dangerous there. And if they can get that run game and everything around him going, and if any backers or anybody underestimates him and maybe don't put everything on the line, which I'm sure the Lions will, they always are putting everything on the line. But if for some reason maybe they underestimate him, I think that Sam could go out there and prove some things, and that would be the big key to success there, because The Lions do, like you're saying, they score so many points. You can't just win this thing with a defensive battle, keeping it on the ground, grinding the clock out. You're going to have to put up 30, at least, in my opinion. And so it's got to be some through the air. And that would be what, if I'm over there worried, I'm sure they're more worried about the defense and stuff like that. But I don't think they're actually worried at all. I think they're pretty quite confident, to be honest. And they are, to be totally honest, as a Vikings watcher and fan, and everybody watcher and fan, I do think that the Lions have edged out almost every team in scoring. I feel like they score the most points out of anybody. Like, they are tough to keep up with.
So we were talking about Jahmyr Gibbs. You brought him up earlier about the impact that he can have. We know what Dan Campbell loves to do when he has both Sonic and Knuckles in David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. But Aaron Jones has been a huge pickup for the Minnesota Vikings. This is something that I think Chicago Bears fans understand here locally, where a running game really can set up the big play, can set up the play action, can protect your line, can protect your quarterback. What has Aaron Jones meant for this offense, for Sam Darnold, for this Vikings team in general?
So much. And it's not just the running that he's doing, it's the leadership that he's bringing into the locker room and the mentality and the things that he does there as well. So it's like you're getting 2 for 1 right there, because then Aaron goes out there and makes a few plays, and that sort of is so contagious for the team, because everybody on the team's very familiar with him already, and he has that energy. And so when he makes those plays, everyone gets psyched, and then all of a sudden you see Jefferson catch or he does, Addison or anyone out there make a catch and stuff, and it starts rolling, and like you said, it really does help set it up. And so with the addition of him, that really brought a force that forced defensive coordinators to plan differently, in my opinion. I think that is the other biggest thing that he brought, so that they can't just go, okay, we're just going to, rush the passer, we're just going to pin it back and go, because Aaron is dangerous, and at any given time he could really break, gash 40 yards out, or bust a nice little screen pass touchdown. And he could do more than just on the ground. He can catch a lot too, and I love everything he's brought. But that's a lot of what I think, and I think he's also brought some leadership and help with some of the other backs. I feel like they're worked off him and with him.
Now, I know you're most worried about Jahmyr Gibbs, but looking back at just guys like between Sam Darnold and Jared Goff, it is kind of crazy how these two guys this year are pretty much spot on just about everything. Both men have over 4,000 yards. Both men have over 30 touchdowns, and both men are just about at 10 interceptions here. Do you see this game being a bit of a quarterback shootout tonight?
I think it's, if the Vikings want to win, it's got to be. They're going to have to. If the Vikings want to win, you could run so much, you could play so much defense, but at the end of the day, and we've seen it, it's a quarterback league, and this is probably one of the reasons I think the Vikings have always never made it and won a Super Bowl, is because the quarterback has to be the one to step up and fill those shoes. And so, that's why that's why the focus was on kind of to stop Jahmyr Gibbs, to divert the focus, because that means the main focus does fall on Jared Goff, and he would also have to make that decision, am I going to have to get in a shootout with Sam, and can I do that and maintain and hang? And we've seen that he can all year. And so if Sam wants to be able to win this game, he's going to have to really throw some balls.
And this question's for you, Mr. New. I guess kind of for everyone in the room here. This is a more general question here. As again, both teams going in are 14-2 here, which means whichever team loses is going to have to play all their playoff games on the road, which I think is a little bit of a BS thing. This kind of goes for everyone here. Do you think the NFL needs to do more like what the NHL and the NBA do here, by going by the record instead of just division? Mr. New, I'll ask you that question first.
It's been something on my mind, and It's always is hard having these divisions and playing the way it is played, and especially when you're in one of the tougher divisions, and I know that does change, over time, but I could see some benefits from the change, but I could also see some chaos coming as well. So I'm still on the fence on it. I'm not sure. I'm sure maybe after tonight I'll screaming, I want it, justice.
I think it just in the NFL, I think the numbers have shown home field really doesn't matter. What's more important is if a cold team goes to a warm city, cold team, things like that. But in the NFL, the margin of talent is so different unless you have somebody like Josh Allen going on a heater or Lamar Jackson. It doesn't matter. Lamar Jackson, if he's going to throw 5 touchdowns, doesn't matter if it's in Baltimore or if it's Miami. I think it's just going to happen. But with that, Mr. New, thank you so much for joining us here on the Sports Cubicle. Good luck tonight. Hopefully you took any heart medication that you might need. But just remember, the only thing waiting for the Vikings or the Lions is a possible date with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, so no pressure.
And I just got done watching Tampa Bay. They're looking pretty sharp. They're looking sharp. And same on the other side. Bo Nix, he was looking pretty good, too.
There's so many good quarterbacks.
Got to believe.
You guys, too. I liked that sack you had today. I really did. That was a nice one, man. I was like, oh, yeah.
Mr. New, thank you, man. Enjoy.
You, guys.
Happy New Year. We'll talk to you hopefully during the playoffs. Later, bud.
Bye.
Take it easy. That was Mr. New here on the Sports Cubicle. Make sure you guys are following him, supporting him, and checking him out whenever he's on the show. Mr. New, if you're still on, where can the fine people support you before we move on to the next stuff? Where can people follow and support you?
All platforms, just MRKNEW, like Mr. Knows Everything. I'm not really a know-it-all, but that is the character I am.
Appreciate it. Everybody go support him, and he will be your comfort during Sunday night football. Thank you, Mr. New, here on the Sports Cubicle with Devin Tingle, Paul Shabari, myself, Mike Mercado, and we got one more thing left to do, boys. It's time to put the feet to the fire and make predictions for the NFL playoffs.
We should update at least kind of what's going on scores-wise, because I think the games that count. Dolphins got off to the early lead.
Yeah, what happened there?
It's been all Jets since then. It's 18-6 right now in the third quarter, but the Dolphins do have the ball, a chance to kind of chip away back at this. Aaron Rodgers now joins the 500 touchdown club, becoming the 5th member of that one.
Did you throw it to Adams?
I didn't see how he did it. I just know he's officially in it. Can you guys name the other 4? Just quick trivia off the top.
Tom Brady?
Yes.
Joe Montana?
No.
So it's modern day Peyton Manning?
Yep.
Ben Roethlisberger?
No.
Phillip Rivers?
No.
Wow, who am I missing?
Well, some big ones. Think who did Rodgers have to wait for?
Oh, Brett Favre.
Brett Favre,
yeah. And then
who would be the last one? Who did I miss?
Think short quarterback.
Drew Brees?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I mean, Aaron Rodgers, even though it was a horrible season and everything that happened with Enigma, that bad man did some great things.
That sounds right, though. Those 5 names, there was a philosophy I had in their eras for fantasy football. Most people don't draft quarterbacks in the first round. That's a dumb strategy. That's stupid. I played in 6-point touchdown leagues where that was a great strategy. Just draft one of those guys in the first round, and as long as you do well in your remaining rounds, you can win that league. But that's... And, the glory days,
So, you boys want to get to it and make some...
Oh, the other thing I was going to say is the Broncos are whooping up on the Chiefs. Chiefs have yet to score. It's the fourth quarter.
I don't think
38-0.
And I don't think anybody from the Kansas City Chiefs will play. Like, I don't think it was Mahomes. I don't think Travis Kelce.
They already wrapped up the number 1
everything
seed,
they were
so they get
supposed to.
the bye. But that means that the Broncos, I think, get the 7th seed then.
From what I could see, they get the 7th seed. So,
it's Carson Wentz starting today.
It was the Bengals, really, that was hoping, gosh, if the Chiefs would have just tried, they would have had a shot today. But no Joe Burrow in the playoffs this year.
And there's a bunch of teams that are super ecstatic that man is not in the playoffs the way him and Jamar Chase have been playing. And really fast, friend of the show, George Murillo, wants to give a shout out to Jimmy Garoppolo, who is balling out for his LA Rams. So, George, your Rolling Meadows friend is balling out, so that's for you. But for everybody else, it is time for us to do what we do best, and that is look dumb in front of all you people, because we are making our playoff predictions. Now, obviously, all we can do is the first round, roughly, and then our Super Bowl prediction, right? Because we don't know how everything will seed out that way. So what we're going to do is we're going to predict the first round, and then I'm going to ask you, who do you have in the Super Bowl, and you make your prediction. If you have anything more detailed you want to be about, feel free. We have a few minutes left. So why don't we do it this way? We'll start off in the AFC. We'll start on the other conference. The 5 and 4 seed is the LA Chargers versus the Houston Texans. Paul?
Yeah, I think with it being at Houston kind of gives the Texans an advantage, but I think just down the stretch, the Chargers have been playing pretty well. So, feet to the fire, I'll say Chargers are going to win that one, but I could go either way on it.
Devin, Chargers, Texans.
I'm going to say Chargers mostly because we've been seeing C.J. Stroud having a huge sophomore slump this year, and in playoffs, you either got to turn that doo-doo on or you're going to be out real fast.
So I hate the fact that we're all going to be in agreement on the first one, that we're all going Chargers. Jim Harbaugh loves to run the ball, loves to play defense. Justin Herbert is is a great quarterback, but just good enough that whatever type of game it is that he can play alongside it. I think the Chargers do more things than the Texans do. Texans are in that sophomore slump. C.J. Stroud doesn't have Steph Diggs, doesn't have Tank Dell. Joe Mixon's only going to be able to do so much. Nico Collins is going to be able to do so much. We saw them only put up 2 points against an okay Baltimore defense on Christmas. I'm going with the Chargers. In the 6-3 matchup, the Steelers and the Ravens. Oh, I love that type of football. Where are you going with Devin?
Ravens, hands down. How do you not pick Lamar Jackson, one guy who might be the MVP again this year?
Paulie?
I'm doing the same thing. Ravens, especially with the home field advantage. AFC North football in January, that's a great idea. But it's going to be the Ravens.
I hate, again, that we are all agreeing. I'm going with the possible MVP, the team with all the offensive weapons. The only thing, if you're a Pittsburgh fan, other than Mike Tomlin is going to have his team ready, is the fact that it is Steelers-Ravens. Anything can happen. But if just being analytical and looking at what we've seen on the field, I'm going with the Ravens. And finally, the 7-2 matchup, the Denver Broncos, if everything stays the way it does, and the Buffalo Bills. I will go first. I will go with the MVP of the NFL season. I will be going with the Buffalo Bills. Bo Nix has had a nice rookie season. Sean Payton has had a great redemption from the Russell Wilson year. I think Cortland Sutton's a hell of a player. I don't like, for fantasy reasons, the 3 running back system, but they have weapons around. They play good defense. Mile High is a tough place to play against, but it won't be a Mile High. It will be in Buffalo, New York. I'm going with the Bills. Paulie?
Bills, all the way.
Now, I am torn as I believe in Bo Nix here. And in my one-work fantasy football league, which I know no one cares about, I won with Bo Nix as quarterback. You know what? I'll pick it as the upset. I'm going with the Broncos here.
How bad of a league was that?
Hey. Your tribal chief is about to speak in Mike Mercado.
This is for another league, but these are for all my league buddies. This is what happens when you got a show on one of the blowtorches here in Chicago for all the YouTube fans. So why don't we go to the NFC North, and we'll save the NFC in general, but we'll go to the NFC North. The 5 seed, the Minnesota Vikings. The 4 seed, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This is an awesome game. This is a game I'm so hyped for. Minnesota's going to have a shootout, a dogfight against the Lions, but it will mean nothing because the Tampa Bay Buccaneers will be eliminating the Minnesota Vikings. I have Tampa Bay moving on. Paulie.
Wow, really? Yep. I think whoever loses this game is going to beat the Buccaneers next week. I need to hear why you think the Buccaneers.
So Baker Mayfield obviously has been on a heater. He is somebody that is tough to contain. If you blitz him, you got to be perfect. He can find the short game. He has Bucky Irving, Rashad White. He obviously has the passing game with Mike Evans. If Kate Otten gets healthy, Jaleel McClellan, the rookie that they just got.
Okay, so you say they beat the Vikings. Let's say that tonight the Vikings win and it's the Lions. Different story?
It might be a different story.
Okay.
It might be a different story because Minnesota can't keep up with the Vikings. The Vikings can put up a lot of points. I believe in Detroit being able to keep up with the high-power offense of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. What would you go, though, with Tampa Bay, Minnesota?
I think no matter who loses tonight, they're going to beat Tampa Bay.
Got you.
And,
Okay.
and I think Tampa Bay could put up a good fight, but I just think that the Vikings and Lions are just too good of a team. But at the same time, the Lions have a ton of injuries. Maybe the Vikings, come back down to earth a little bit. Maybe the Buccaneers go on that random run that we see sometimes, the Cinderella story. But I'm going NFC North all the way on this.
Yeah.
I'm kind of in the sort of opposite with Paul there. I think whoever loses tonight's game is going to get whooped by the Buccaneers. I definitely think it's going to crush all their momentum. I know that's kind of a silly sort of voodoo sort of reason to pick it, but I think the Buccaneers are going to beat whoever they got to face.
This is an awesome matchup. That's going to be an awesome game. This is another awesome matchup. All these playoffs are going to be great. Washington, LA, Commanders, Rams. I'm going with the rookie Jaden Daniels. I'm going with the Commanders. Devin.
It's a little torn because let's take a look at the last time the Washington football team, I can legally say that because they've always been a football team in Washington, D.C. Paul's shaking his head. F you. I can say that much. Had a rookie quarterback in the playoffs. They ended up losing, but granted, that rookie quarterback was a guy who was injured while Jaden Daniels is much very happy there. And I'm going to crush George's spirits just like he might be crushed in fantasy football and say the Commanders are going to win this one as well.
Commanders, Rams.
I'm going to say Commanders, but Devin is wrong that there has been a team in Washington the entire time because they started as the Boston Braves in 1932.
Take that. And speaking of
Your
taking
boomer
that,
is showing.
Taking that too is Green Bay after a loss to the Bears. It will be Packers. It will be Eagles. I am going with the Eagles that are constantly trying to fire Nick Sirianni. I'm going with the Eagles beating the Packers, and both NFC North teams are gone after Wild Card Weekend. Paulie.
Eagles.
Dev.
The question is, will Jalen Hurts be there?
Yes.
Then Eagles, absolutely. I know he's been out for the past 2 weeks. I don't know if he'll be healthy or not.
All right, boys, rapid fire, no time. We're going to do it. Pressure's on. Super Bowl predictions. Devin, I am giving you the option right now. You got time? Make your pick. Who wins the Super Bowl? What is the matchup? Give me the Super Bowl.
Now, it's really hard to always pick against the Chiefs, and I always say the Chiefs because it's the most obvious one there, because I believe that as much as I think the Ravens are the best team out there in the AFC, it's definitely going to go to the Chiefs because Patrick Mahomes remembers who he is, and Taylor Swift likes the Chiefs, and we all know the cameras and the Hollywood ending here. You go to the NFC, I am so darn torn here. But I'm going to say this. I was going to cop out a little bit. Whoever wins tonight's Sunday Night Football matchup is going up against the Chiefs in the Super Bowl.
Paulie?
Bills beat the Eagles.
I have the Chiefs versus the Bucks, and I have a three-peat. The Kansas City Chiefs will beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in a rematch in the Super Bowl. What a fun way to end this. So everybody has, I think, the Chiefs in the Super Bowl?
Yes. No, I have the Bills.
The Bills in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So this is the only thing I have as we're wrapping it up. The only reason I didn't go with the Bills. Do I trust anybody to go to Kansas City in Arrowhead in the AFC Championship game for a chance to the Super Bowl? Am I willing to bet against the greatest quarterback of all time? I did it too many times betting
Tom
against
Brady's
a man.
not there.
I did it too many times betting against a man in Gillette. Am I willing to do it again? Is Josh Allen really the MVP? Is this the coronation of the great quarterback? Is Paulie going to be right? That is what it means when we do our predictions. We want to know what you think. Who wins the playoff scenarios in the NFC North? Who goes where? Who is going to be in the Super Bowl? Who's going to hoist the Vince Lombardi Trophy? We want to know your thoughts. Thank you all so much for joining us on this edition of The Sports Cubicle. We're on YouTube at The Sports Cubicle. Check us out on WCPT 820 SoundCloud and HeartlandSignal.com. He's Devin Tingle. He's Paul Shabari. I'm Mike Mercado. Thank you to Daniel Marver. Thank you to Josh Buckhalter. And thank you to Mr. New. And more importantly, thank you to each and every one of you. We will see you next time.
Hi, I'm Carson Kressley. Of all the resources in the world, kindness is the most precious. For more than 140 years, American Humane has been working to protect animals in disasters, on farms, on the silver screen, and in zoos and aquariums caring for the world's vanishing creatures. You can help too by making humane choices every day. Visit AmericanHumane.org for simple ways to build a more caring and compassionate world for all of us.